Hey there, friends. Dave Paulides, Canine Missing Project. And that is Huck L. Berry. Yes, she is the queen executive producer of the show. Yeah, Huck, I'll do it. She goes, what's up, Dad? Show them my picture. I'm really proud of that picture. Yeah, that's Huck's picture. It's when we were out on the lake. That's her life preserver. She doesn't need one. She swims like a fish. He's a good girl. Yeah? He's a good girl? Yeah, good girl. You're good puppy. You're a good puppy. You're a good girl. So today we started off our day at 9 degrees. Huck's running around outside, dives right in the snow at 9 degrees. She'd be happy if I just left her there all day. Crazy dog. Crazy dog. So, got an interesting show for you today, to say the least. First of all, get some things out of the way. We've got the Missing 411 National Parks movie will premiere March 21st, Tacoma, Washington. You want to get tickets to go to missing411.com and go to our online store. If you'd like to watch the event, not attend, we're going to have an online streaming session where you'll see the movie and you'll see all the interviews and such that go on at the premiere. Yes, you can sign up for that. And September 9th, I think it is, we've got the Alaska cruise that's going to leave from Seattle. And it's going to be a joint Missing 411 and Bigfoot cruise. Got some great speakers on both sides. You can attend all of the speaking events because they won't overlap. We made sure about that. And we're going to have some outstanding excursions. So you can go out with one of the speakers, and some of them do whale watching, others will go fishing. Yeah, that's me. And one of the best things, and I'm telling you this right now, is that the ports that we stop at, none of these places are huge because Alaska doesn't have huge ports. But some of the food, if you like fish, wow. I can only attest to, while I think it was in Ketchikan, I had one of the best barbecued salmon dinners I've ever had. And then I forgot the name of the other city I was at, and I had a barbecued halibut dinner. Oh, unbelievable. And at the time, I went halibut fishing with like 10 of you guys, and everybody brought back halibut. And what they do is they take your name and they flash freeze the halibut, and when you get home, it's sitting on your doorstep and delivered that day. I've had halibut all year. That year, it was unbelievable. Just as good as it was fresh. And this was on Royal Caribbean. I don't have anything bad to say about them. I've been on multiple cruises with them. I'd be honest. If I'd say, the food's okay, but no, it was all good. And people on the ship are always friendly. I have no complaints. So if you've ever thought of taking a cruise, it's one of the few cruises where you go up the inside passage to Alaska. So you're sailing along in islands, in between islands in Alaska, and you will see wildlife. Bring your binoculars, and from the deck of the ship, it's unbelievable. Yeah, unbelievable. Hope to see you there. And yeah, we've had a lot of signups so far. So get in there. Today, we're going to talk about two cases. Unusual cases. Two of them. And both of them were sent to me by you guys. So thank you. I would never have heard about these if it wasn't for you. If you know about a case, send it to missing411@yahoo.com. I'll read them. I read them all. If you think a case that fits our profile points, send them in. But first, go to YouTube, go to the Can-Am, like Canadian American, Can-Am Missing Project. We have 900 videos there. I've done a lot on missing people. And there's a very good chance that the one you're thinking about, I've already done it. But if it's one you haven't heard of, send it to me. First case involves a man named Vernon Home, 41 years old. This is Vernon, sent in by a viewer. Went missing June 11, 2005 in Burbank, Washington, kind of on the eastern edge of Washington, kind of near the Columbia and Snake River. He was born and raised partially in Quincy, Washington, and then raised the remaining part of his life in Burbank. He had a son named Andrew. He was really an expert woodworker. He worked for several companies over the years. And he previously had spent 2 years on a fishing boat in the Bering Sea. You know, like Deadliest Catch. I tell you what, that's one thing I could never do. Those guys don't sleep. They're in rough seas. Oh, I would be chumming for the fish. It would be awful. He was an outdoorsman. He loved camping and fishing. And friends said that he was always committed to helping others. And he loved kids. And up until 2004, he spent several years being a caregiver to his dad. Now that's a good son. A really, really good son. Now Vernon lived in the Heights section. This is downtown Burbank, Snake River, Columbia River. This is Highway 124 right here. He was right in here. That's right where his R is where he lived with his folks. Well, I mean, he lived there for a good portion of his life. He spent the majority of his life in and around Burbank, and he knew that area like you know your backyard. On June 11th, he was visiting a business in downtown Washington, downtown Burbank. He decided to leave and was walking home, a path of a little less than a mile. He had done this hundreds of times. Well, he didn't come home, and his family reported him missing. The jurisdiction there is the Walla Walla Sheriff's Office. Good department. Well, they sent deputies out, and they searched the route from the business to his home several times. They found nothing. There wasn't a lot of crime in that area. He was never a suspect in anything. He didn't have any enemies that anyone knew about. And it wasn't dangerous. It was just mainly city streets and sidewalks all the way home. Well, they searched the area. They didn't come up with anything, and they were about to give up. Then, June 19th, a little more than a week after he disappears, a father and a son were fishing in a pond and spotted a body just after 8 a.m. on June 19th. And they called the Walla Walla Sheriff. There's a group called the Columbia Basin Dive Rescue Team. And unbelievably, they were out conducting training in Richland when they got the call. Well, they got the call from the sheriff's office. So they packed up, they drove over. They get in their gear, and the pond was about 8 to 10 feet deep. They go in, they pull the body out. It was fully clothed, and it was later positively identified as Vernon. Strangely, they searched that pond trying to find an area where the ground gave in. They didn't find any. The body was retrieved at 10:30 a.m. There was no obvious signs of trauma, no wounds on the body. And it appeared, according to the coroner, that it had been there the entire time that Vernon had been missing. And it was found right by the Snake River Bridge. Now, he would have gone home right over this area to the house, but he found way off track on a pond far from the bridge in a very unusual place. And the coroners and the deputies even made comments about how unusual this was. Coroner Wayne Jorstad stated he wasn't sure where Vernon went in the water or what he was even doing in that area. Now, the villager that gave me this case even made a comment because he knew this area and he knew Vernon. He said the location of that body didn't make sense to anybody. The cause of the death was never released by the coroner's office. Vernon was missing for a total of 8 days. There were no witnesses to him going in the water. Again, no obvious signs of a struggle along the embankment, nowhere where the ground gave way, no footprints going in the water. Vernon wasn't suicidal. He was found in an area that just doesn't make any sense. And he had probably been drinking some alcohol. As is consistent with every case where a body is found in an unusual location in the water. Every one. They never said what he was or wasn't wearing, other than he was clothed. But was he wearing boots, shoes? They didn't say. These cases baffle me greatly because these small jurisdictions don't know to maybe screen for GHB, maybe screen for other drugs. It's one of those things that unless there's a national trend to talk about this, 99% of the sheriff's departments, police departments will never even know what we're doing. And that is a shame, folks, because whatever is happening to these people, they're alone, drinking, nobody sees anything. They end up in a place that doesn't make any sense, even though they may know that area like you know your backyard. So how do you come to the conclusion that they're there? Right? All right. That's case number 1. The next case, I gotta say that if you read my book, Missing 411, A Sobering Coincidence, this would have been a top 10 case. Oh, it's very strange. And again, it was sent in to me by one of the viewers, so thank you for sending it. The lady's name was Ophelia Bretnacher. I know, it's a weird name, Bretnacher. From France. Ophelia, 22 years old, went missing December 4th, 2008 at 3 a.m. She was born June 8th, 1986 in Verdun, France. She was born and raised. She was described as super smart, highly intelligent, and she was on a special exchange student program for brilliant people. It was called very prestigious, between Hungary and France. And she was attending the Reims Management School. Yeah. Smart, right? Well, she was in Hungary, in Budapest, in that general area. And she lived with a host family that was set up through the school. Ophelia was smart, had a lot of common sense, had been there for a while, and had an Italian boyfriend. On December 3rd, she went downtown to meet friends and attend a couple clubs. By every account, people that were talked to, she was not intoxicated. She just had a couple of drinks. She didn't drink a lot. She left the club sometime before 3 a.m. And investigators followed her on CCTV cameras. This is long after she disappeared. She followed Ophelia as she left a place called the Port Side of Cuba Club. She was alone, carrying a purse. Nobody was following her. Actually, proper wording was a handbag. She left the club and disappeared sometime between 2 and 3 a.m. on December 4th. She first went out on December 3rd, stayed, past midnight, so now it's December 4th. At about 3:30 a.m., friends of Ophelia's boyfriend are walking over what's called the Chain Bridge over the Danube. And right near a support beam that hits the sidewalk, they find a bag, a woman's bag. Inside the bag, they find Ophelia's ID, wallet, phone, and cash. So, this is what they call the Chain Bridge right here. Separates two sides of the city. She's crossing, they believe she was crossing, they don't know, but her purse is found on that beam at about 3:30 a.m. Now these are good friends of her boyfriend. They know that they're going to see her or other people tomorrow, so rather than turn it into the police, they just hold it. And they then turn it over to friends of her boyfriend, who turn it over to the boyfriend, who turn it over to the police when they realize that she's missing. Now, the last time she's seen on CCTV is on that one side of the bridge. Never seen on the other side. And she's never seen going on the bridge either. December 5th, a full day later, her host family had been calling everyone, called her home in France, told her family. Finally, they decided they're going to call the police. Now, there were rumors that when that host family called the police, unbelievably, the police didn't classify her as a missing person for 30 days. That was the rumor, although never confirmed. The police searched the Danube, and then the parents went there and they requested French police. French police got approval from Hungary, and they did go, and they sent divers and boats, searched the water and the banks of the Danube. Didn't find anything. Search and rescue went on for many days, and it was surrounded by a lot of rumors that were baseless. Not surprisingly, when you have a young person that disappears, there's a lot of erroneous rumors. They ran away, they found a new boyfriend and left, they were attacked and killed, all these things, and everything was floating in the air. Nobody knew really what happened. She was a very stable person. Wouldn't just run off. Well, nothing happens for 2 months. February 2009. Boatmen were 4 kilometers downstream from the chain bridge, and they were in backwater near a sewage plant and saw a body in the water. Now, backwater means you got a reverse flow, which means the water's flowing. If the water's flowing downstream this way, this water's flowing upstream that way. But they were in a side channel. Best I can tell is they were right there. Right in this little side channel right there. And they were near Phel. They made a big deal about this backwater flow and how she couldn't have got there by just floating there. It was a big deal. And people said, oh, you know, she was found upstream from where the bridge was she supposedly fell in from. Well, that wasn't true. She was actually found downstream, but in a backwater flow in an area that didn't make sense. That's the truth. So you have to get through a lot of garbage to figure out what the truth really was. But it didn't make sense to anybody that she was there. Well, they recover the body. It's later positively ID'd through DNA as her. And the Hungarian coroners come out and they rule that she died by drowning. They also noted that the inside of her right thigh had a bruise. They stated that suicide was also a possibility, but they had no proof. There was nothing to support that other than she disappeared and found in water. Now, in March 2009, the French coroners were allowed to do a second autopsy. And the French came to the same conclusions as the Hungarians. Interestingly, the blood alcohol showed just a small amount in her system. She wasn't intoxicated. Coroners never got the phone records from the investigation. And both countries complained about that to investigators. I find that odd. The French coroners also complained that the Hungarians held some of their autopsy results from them, but they never said what. Now, Ophelia's family apparently was fairly well-to-do because they didn't believe anything that was coming out of either coroner's office. So they hire a private investigator and they do a third autopsy. A French medical expert, now hold on to your hats on this one, stated Ophelia disappeared sometime within 20 minutes of 3 a.m. per everything on CCTV. And that the approximate time of death was 1 p.m. So where was she for 10 hours, folks? And that is what everyone wanted to know. You don't hear this very often because public coroners' offices won't release the time of death. Now, both coroners agreed that that timeline was correct. The family came out, the French family of Ophelia came out and said they believe she was kidnapped, held against her will, and killed, and her body dumped in the river in an area that didn't make sense to anybody. In February 2010, the family filed a murder claim in French courts. In March 2010, the Paris judicial system had an inquiry that started. And they did talk about this large hematoma that was on the right inner thigh. But both coroners, Hungary and French, said that they couldn't tie it to any foul play. They're not even sure how it might have happened. And one thing you have to remember about bodies when they're flowing down a river especially, they hit things. Hit rocks, trees. Bruising happens. In a lake, not so much. In a river, all the time. In 2014, the Hungarian police briefly opened and then closed this case once again. They never made it quite clear why they opened it or why they again closed it. Now, Phel did have an Italian boyfriend. He was never made a suspect. He was never looked at as a suspect. But there were several theories proposed. Now, if you've read Missing 411, A Sobering Coincidence, you can yell out when you say, "That's it, Dave, that's it." Okay? Theory number one was suicide. Oh, but there's a big problem with that. When people commit suicides, they put their hands on the rail of the bridge, climb over, contemplate, jump. No fingerprints. In fact, there was no dirt disturbed anywhere on the rails. No note. No outward depression that led anyone to believe that she was suicidal. And she had a very low blood alcohol level. Theory number two, accidental drowning. They said maybe she fell over the railing. The purse or her bag was purposely, it looked like to everybody, placed at the bottom of this beam on the walkway. She was going home. She wasn't sightseeing. She'd been to this area many times before. She knew her way home. And it came out many times she was an excellent swimmer. And she was described by family and friends as very smart. Okay, you fall in the river. You swim home. You swim to the bank. And the third one, proposed by the family, is homicide. She was killed and then thrown in the water. One huge faux pas to that, there were no injuries to the body consistent with a fight, no defensive wounds, and no injuries that could have caused a fatal injury. End of the story. You with me so far? Now, in Sobering Coincidence, I talk about if a body goes in the water under the influence of GHB, you will drown. But she wasn't tested for GHB. She was found in an area where the natural flow downriver would not have put the body, per the coroner's office. The time of death, is not consistent with falling in water at 3 a.m. Oh, that's right, huh, Dave? Yeah. Well, friends, what happened? I want you to think very carefully about this. What could have happened? Well, as in all of the cases I've talked to you about over the years that exactly match what happened to Ophelia, nobody sees her go in the water. Even though there's people walking back from the bars crossing this bridge all the time, nobody sees anything. Nobody hears a splash. There were rumors that somebody heard some strange sounds. But so what? She wasn't suicidal. I don't think this matches any of the proposed theories that they're thinking of what happened. But I've talked about this guy before. Officer Gannon from NYPD, worked missing persons. He had several missing person cases where people thought a victim went in the river here, but the bodies were found upstream. Or the body went in the river on this date and time, it's found at this date and time, but the body's only been missing for that period of time, meaning the cause of death couldn't have been when the person supposedly went in the water. And Gannon started to put the pieces together I'm talking to you about now. He said none of these cases made sense. They couldn't have happened the way they claimed. Now, Gannon and his team looked at this from a regional level. The United States, predominantly the East Coast. But I've looked at it worldwide, as I'm looking at it right here in Hungary. Yes, it's a worldwide issue, folks. And yeah, it spans over 100 years. Oh yeah, that's right. So it's not some murderer's team of 95-year-old men that are out there still killing people. No, it's not that. It's something way different. I don't know. But it's nothing natural, that's for sure. One thing I failed to talk about just recently, but I'm going to now, kindness. Kindness is really the key to life. Today, like I said, I go out to eat. The one thing I do regularly is I go out to eat lunch. Because I'm usually out in the world during that time during lunch, and I usually find some place to eat. Today I was eating lunch. I haven't seen this waitress in a long time, and she came over and she said, in fact, I didn't even know she watched my video. She goes, "Hey, how's Huck?" I go, "What? You know my Huck?" "Oh yeah, she's so pretty." Aw. Now that was kind of her. And you know what? I appreciated that. It doesn't have to be a comment about me. That's my lovely dog there. And she came back later on. I told her how much I appreciated that, and I appreciate anybody watching my show, and kindness is key. As a society, we need more patience and more kindness, more understanding. I appreciate you guys being here greatly. Paulides out.